You didn't end up here by accident. It doesn't matter if you clicked on this video out of curiosity, on a whim, or because it showed up randomly on your feed. None of that is truly random. Because what's behind this moment is something that can't be explained by ordinary logic. Some people call it synchronicity. Others say it's destiny. But the name doesn't matter. What matters is that you felt it. A vibration, a slight chill, a different kind of silence inside. As if something within you knew you needed to hear this. And it really did, because this isn't just a regular video. And what's about to be revealed could turn everything upside down. Have you ever felt like the world around you just doesn't make sense anymore? Like things are out of place, like there's something wrong with what's considered normal. Wake up, work, pay bills, sleep, repeat. Always rushing, always chasing something that never seems to come. And even when it does, it feels empty. That feeling isn't a flaw, it's a calling. A sign that you've started to see the cracks in reality. The varnish is breaking. And what's behind it is what many have tried to keep hidden from you your whole life. But you feel it, even if you can't explain it. Something inside you has started to beat differently. A discomfort that seems to whisper, this isn't all there is. And it really isn't, but most people ignore that whisper. They bury it with distractions, with momentary pleasure, with duties imposed on them since childhood. You, on the other hand, paused. Even if just for a few seconds. You chose to listen. And that's why this message found you. Because it's not just a string of words, it's a code. And if it's resonating with you now, it's because it already existed in your field. It was just waiting for the right moment to be activated. And guess what? That moment has come. The strangest thing is, this calling has no sound. It doesn't come in words. It doesn't scream. It doesn't force. It just vibrates. Quietly, like an echo coming from within your chest. A memory without an image. A truth you can't quite put into words, but that you know is there. And that changes everything, because from the moment you recognize this calling, something starts to move, not outside, but inside. The pieces that once felt scattered begin to align. What seemed confusing starts to take shape, and even without fully understanding what's happening, you feel like you're heading in the right direction. Because for the first time, you're returning to yourself. And the scariest part of all, once this code is activated, there's no going back. You might try. You might distract yourself again. You might sink back into your old ways, but something in you won't allow it anymore. Because you saw it, you felt it, and now you know there's something much greater waiting to be discovered. This journey doesn't start with answers. It starts with discomfort, with a question, with a spark. And that's what's happening now. You're standing before the first door, and it only opens from the inside out. What's about to be revealed can no longer be forgotten. Now that this calling has been activated, you'll start to notice the traces it leaves behind. Signs that used to go unnoticed. Coincidences that aren't coincidences. Words that hit you like they were spoken just for you. Everything starts to take on a different texture, a different vibration, like reality is trying to tell you something. And now, finally, you're listening. But pay attention. What you'll find on the other side of this door is not comfort. It's not safety. It's truth. And truth, at first, is uncomfortable. It shakes structures. It questions certainties. It deprograms the lie you've lived without knowing, because only after seeing the prison can you choose to be free. And that's what scares those who are still asleep. Freedom requires responsibility. Once you wake up, you can no longer blame the world, others, or fate. Because you realize that everything, absolutely everything, is tied to something deeper. You're about to find out what that is. You grow up hearing that you need to become someone in life, that studying, working hard, being productive, and following the rules is the right path. And if you do everything right, one day you'll be rewarded with stability, respect, a good retirement, and maybe some peace. But no one tells you that this path already comes with a set destination. And that destination isn't freedom. It's conformity. Society wrote a script for you before you were even born. Your parents were taught to follow it, and now they expect you to do the same. But there's a problem. That script wasn't written by you. It was programmed, line by line, step by step, until it looked like it was yours. But it never was. You're taught to compete from childhood, to compare yourself, to run to prove your worth, to mold yourself to others' expectations, to ignore your body, to silence your intuition, to shut out your soul. The world says, be strong, productive, positive, tolerant, useful. But what happens when all that becomes a disguise for an emotional prison masked as success? And the cruelest part, this script is sold to you as freedom. Working 12 hours a day, sitting in traffic for hours, living stressed out, suffering from anxiety, and fearing you won't keep up has become normal, as if that's the fair price for existing. But who decided this is what it means to live? You were taught to obey, but not to think. You were taught to memorize answers, but not to ask questions, to behave, but not to know yourself, to please, but not to feel, to seek approval, but not to recognize your own voice. And in the middle of all this, you started to believe that this was just growing up, just maturing, just being part of the world. But this isn't maturity. This is disconnection. It's like a piece of your essence was ripped out from a very young age, and in its place, a character was put. A character who learns to smile even with a heavy chest, who says everything's fine while falling apart inside, who pretends to be in control while actually feeling completely lost. And that character became your identity, a collection of ideas you were told were you. But the truth is, you were never that. You were never just this body, never just this name, this job title, this ID number, this routine. You are something much deeper, much freer, but your mind was programmed to forget, to repeat, to follow invisible orders without noticing. And the scariest part of all is that this programming doesn't use chains. It uses stories. Stories you've heard so many times that now you believe them. Life is hard. You have to suffer to achieve anything. Money is dirty. Spirituality is for the weak. Feelings are a weakness. It is what it is, and that's that. And the more you repeat these phrases, the more they shape your reality, because your mind believes what's repeated with emotion. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. That's why this prison is so effective. Because you don't see the bars. You think you're choosing, when in fact you're just reacting. Reacting to what you were taught, reacting to fear, reacting to expectations, reacting to what society wants from you. And here's where the real poison lies. You don't even realize you're trapped, because the system disguises itself as normality. It gives you small doses of pleasure so you'll accept the pain as part of the game. A weekend off, an interest-free payment plan, a holiday on the calendar, a compliment at work, a like on social media, and you convince yourself it's all good. But inside, you feel the emptiness growing, because that normality was never natural. You wonder why you're always tired, why time slips through your fingers, why, even doing everything you were told was right, you still feel like something's missing. And the answer is simple, but brutal. You're trying to find meaning in a world designed to make sure you never question it. And if you dare step off the script, the system reacts. You're labeled, called weird, reckless, crazy, mystical, radical, all to make you fall back in line, all so you'll accept the standard, all so you keep spinning in the same gear. But there comes a moment when the body can't take it anymore. The mind starts to break down, the heart feels heavy, and you realize that no matter how hard you try to fit in, something in you just doesn't belong in that mold. That moment is the breaking point. It's when you start to see what was always there, but your eyes didn't see. Because it wasn't your eyes that were closed, it was your awareness. You begin to notice that there's a layer behind the layer, an invisible structure, but present in everything. A vibrational matrix that holds up this conditioned reality. It's not made of wires or chips, but of frequencies, of collective beliefs, of unconscious pacts, of subtle commands that operate directly on your energy field without you noticing. And if all this is bothering you, it's because the veil is beginning to lift, the noise is being interrupted, and the truth, little by little, is finding its voice. But there's a group that escaped this prison and carried a secret with them, a secret so ancient it survived empires, crusades, burnings, censorships, and ages of forgetting. It was passed down in silence, from master to disciple, not for vanity, not for power, but because this knowledge couldn't fall into unprepared hands. Have you ever felt that there are truths so powerful they feel alive? They're not just ideas, they're presences, frequencies, things that, when you hear them, your whole body reacts, your heart races, your skin tingles, your breath shifts, as if something inside you is being touched by something that comes from long before you were born. This secret was sealed in a book, but it's not an ordinary book. It can't be read in a hurry or understood with intellect alone. This book doesn't open with fingers. It opens with vibration. You can flip through the pages. You can underline the words. You can try to memorize the concepts, but nothing will happen if you're not ready. Because this book only reveals itself when something inside you begins to remember, and that's the point. It doesn't teach anything that isn't already in your field. It just rearranges what was asleep. Its name is Kybalion, 7 letters that, for those who read with their eyes closed and their heart awake, have the power to deprogram centuries of lies. But pay attention, this isn't a self-help book. It doesn't promise you money or status or miracles. In fact, it's way more dangerous than that, because it doesn't promise comfort. It offers something way more radical, real liberation. And true freedom takes courage. Courage to look inside and see everything you've tried to hide. Courage to let go of the version of yourself you built to please others. Courage to step out of the victim role. Courage to accept that no one is coming to save you, that the one responsible for your reality is you. The Kybalion isn't about pretty theories. It's a key, and every key has one purpose: to open. But open what? Doors that were sealed shut inside of you. Inner gateways that were locked when you started believing more in what the world told you about yourself than in what you knew, deep down, to be true. This book wasn't made to be read. It was made to be felt. It vibrates. And if you're feeling that vibration now, it's because the code is already in motion. It's like every word in there was waiting for the right moment to connect with an exact point inside of you. When that happens, there's no going back. A lot of people read the Kybalion and don't get anything from it because they're looking for external answers. They're after concepts, theories, formulas. But this book isn't linear. It's spiral. It operates on another level. It rearranges your field. It unlocks hidden patterns. It activates memories that were wiped out. And it all starts with one simple phrase: the lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. That phrase seems harmless, but it hides one of the most powerful keys in the entire Hermetic tradition. It's a warning. Knowledge won't be delivered through words. It'll only be received through frequency. That's why this book made it through the centuries, because it didn't need physical protection. It was invisible to those still blind on the inside. Those who weren't ready simply didn't see it. They passed by it like it was just another book, but those who were ready recognized it. And you know what all those who recognized it had in common? They weren't chosen by a master, or selected by an order, or part of some mystical elite. They were chosen by something quieter, the vibrational field they carried. When the frequency aligned, the book showed up. It didn't matter where or when, it just appeared. Sometimes as a printed text, sometimes as a conversation, sometimes as a dream. But always in the same way. When the soul was ripe, the teaching arrived. Do you see now why this is dangerous? Because someone who starts to remember where they come from stops being easy to control. They stop following orders without question. They stop accepting the collective lie as the only reality, and the whole system depends on your obedience. The Kybalion is dangerous because it doesn't give you advice. It gives you back your power. But the ones who wrote this book chose to remain completely anonymous, and that was no accident. The Kybalion was signed by 3 initiates. That's it. No names, no bios, no trace, no photo, no face, not a single line revealing who they were. And that absence wasn't a mistake. It was wisdom. These 3 didn't want followers. They didn't want fame. They didn't want credit. They knew something that most people still don't get. When the ego signs, the truth loses strength. They didn't need to be seen, because what they carried wasn't theirs. It was something much older, much deeper, something that had been protected since the days of the Egyptian temples, even before written history, before any known book. They were just channels, silent voices bringing to light a code that existed long before words. And this is where the real mystery begins. Why 3? Why anonymous? Why now? These 3 knew exactly what they were doing. They understood that the world was about to enter a new cycle. That humanity was on the edge of a vibrational collapse, and that at that critical point, the knowledge needed to rise again, but not in hidden temples or secret schools. It had to rise in the public realm, but in a coded way, not coded with complex symbols, but with strategic simplicity, just enough to touch those who were ready, subtle enough to go unnoticed by the distracted. A book that gives nothing to those who read only with their eyes, but gives everything to those who read with an open field. And if you're here right now, something in you has already realized this isn't ordinary content, that there's something behind the words, a vibration, a frequency, an invisible presence that feels like it's moving through time, as if it's being written right now, just for you. The 3 initiates knew the danger was never the knowledge itself. The real danger was putting it in the wrong hands. In the hands of those who seek power without responsibility, who want to manipulate without understanding the price. Because the laws in that book are real. They govern everything. And those who master them alter the very structure of reality. Do you get now why this had to be kept hidden? Imagine a world where anyone could reprogram their life, access deep levels of manifestation, break energetic contracts passed down through generations without any inner preparation. That would be like handing a laser beam to a child. It could heal, but it could also destroy. That's why this knowledge has always been passed through initiation, because true knowledge doesn't enter through the mind. It only activates when the heart and consciousness vibrate together. And those 3 initiates knew humanity was about to forget that, about to replace feeling with thinking, intuition with reasoning, inner truth with imposed truths. So they left the Kybalion as both a gift and a test. A gift for those who were waking up, and a test for those who weren't ready yet. Because those who read this book without preparation see nothing. They read it like it's some weird, old, cryptic text. They close the page and go on with life. But those who read it with presence feel the impact. Something shifts inside. One structure starts to fall apart, and another one starts to take shape. Those three initiates aren't just historical figures, they're archetypes. They represent the three aspects of the true seeker: the one who listens, the one who understands, and the one who manifests. They are mirrors of your own process, because on some level, you're being initiated right now too. And this initiation doesn't happen through oaths or rituals. It happens when you hear a truth and your whole body says, "This is real." Not because someone proved it, but because something in you recognized it. Truth, when heard with a clear heart, doesn't need an argument. And if you've made it this far, it's because your vibration is starting to align with these ancient frequencies. The same ones those three initiates carried, the same ones pulsing in the Kybalion, the same ones the ancients called living wisdom. Because this knowledge never died, it just went quiet. Now, it's waking up again. And within those pages are 7 laws that explain how reality actually works. But one of them was hidden. Before talking about those laws, you need to understand one fundamental thing. Something maybe no one ever told you, or worse, maybe they even told you the opposite. Because what's about to be said is not a metaphor, not a poetic vision, not a spiritual delusion. It's a simple fact, raw and direct. The reality you live in is not objective. It's shaped by your mind, by your field, by your vibration, but mostly by the invisible filters you carry without even knowing it. You believe you see the world as it is, but no one sees the world as it is. Everyone sees the world as they are, and that changes everything. Imagine your consciousness is like a projector, and reality is the screen. The image that shows up out there isn't coming from the screen. It's coming from inside the projector. The lens is your mind. And the filters distorting the light are your beliefs, your traumas, your emotional loops, your experiences, and especially what's been installed in you since you were a child. If you've heard your whole life that money is hard, the world shows up as hostile. If you learn that love is dangerous, you sabotage it before it even starts. If you were told you're not good enough, you create a reality that proves it, and you don't even notice. You think you're being realistic, but you're being programmed. Most people don't realize they're constantly reacting to childhood, reacting to their dad's fears, their mom's silence, the school's judgment, the unresolved traumas. And this constant reaction creates what you call my life. But it's not your life. It's a mental reflection, a vibrational copy of the information running in the background of your system. The good news? It can be reprogrammed. But first, you have to admit you're being controlled. Because as long as you think you're in charge, the programming stays active. The ego loves to feel in control, but it's just a program, a defense system, an armor you put on to survive, and that now needs to come off if you really want to live. Your mind is a field, literally, a living electromagnetic field pulsing around you all the time. It vibrates your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions, and more. It attracts situations, people, and events that match exactly what you're putting out. That's why you keep repeating patterns. The same types of relationships, the same money problems, the same emotional crises with different names. Because your field is calling for that, not out of malice, but out of loyalty to what was once recorded as normal. And until you change the field, life out there stays the same. You can move houses, change cities, switch partners, start a new career, but if the internal program is the same, everything repeats. Until you get tired, until something in you screams, until the calling gets so loud that ignoring it becomes impossible. Maybe that moment is now. Maybe you're realizing now that it's not bad luck, not karma, not coincidence. It's frequency. It's a vibrational script that's been running for years. And now it can be broken. But for that, you need courage. Courage to look inside with honesty, to question everything you were taught, to reevaluate the thoughts you repeat like mantras without even noticing. Have you ever noticed how your mind talks to itself? How it tells you stories all the time? This won't work. You can't do it. So-and-so is better than you. Better not try. Better stay quiet. Better just please people. And you believe it. Because that voice sounds like you, but it's not. It's just a repetition of what you were told so many times. It became your personal narrative. And now comes the most important part. If your mind is a field that shapes your reality, then whoever controls that field controls your life. And that's why the first principle of the Kybalion is so dangerous. It reveals what no one wants you to find out. Because if what you experience on the outside is a reflection of what you're vibrating on the inside, then everything starts before form, before matter, before experience. Everything starts in the mind. The Kybalion states it plainly, the all is mind. But understand, this isn't wordplay, it's not poetry, it's not esoteric philosophy meant to sound deep, it's literal. The all, that which gives origin, support, and direction to all things, is in its purest essence, mind. Now take a deep breath and let that sink in. The entire universe is mental. What you call reality, what seems physical, solid, stable, is just a temporary condensation of a much more subtle mental vibration. Matter isn't the starting point, it's the end point. The trace, the imprint. The world you see, touch, and experience is the result of a conscious field, not the other way around. That means your body, your home, your relationships, your bank account, your problems, your achievements. All of them are, at their core, mental creations materialized. And here's the kicker. That creation doesn't just happen consciously, it happens all the time, even when you're not paying attention. Because your mind never stops. Not for a second. It's constantly projecting, interpreting, conditioning, shaping. You live in a reality created by your mind, but powered by commands that often aren't even yours. The Law of Mentalism says that everything is mind, but that sentence hides a huge power, because if everything is mind, then you're creating your life right now with what you think, feel, believe, and emit. But if you don't know that, someone else can think for you. And that's exactly what's been happening for centuries. Systems, religions, governments, media, entire cultures were built to program your mind with ideas that keep you running in circles. Ideas like scarcity, guilt, fear, separation, inferiority, expectation. The danger of the Kybalion is exactly that. It pulls you out of that game. It doesn't give you a new idea. It destroys the prison of ideas you never even realized you were carrying. Have you ever stopped to observe your thoughts, noticed how they show up without you calling them? How they come loaded with old voices, familiar tones, silent criticisms, canned judgments. Those thoughts, if not questioned, become truths, and those truths become your reality. Mentalism shows you clearly, everything that exists started as a thought. Every invention, every disaster, every healing, every system of control, every revolution. It all started with a mental image, an idea, a focus, a field. And that's why real change never happens from the outside in. It only happens when you access the origin, when you go beyond the effect and get to the cause, when you stop trying to fix the mirror and start looking at the face. You can go to all the therapies, move to another country, change your lifestyle, start over as many times as you want. But if your mental vibration stays the same, you'll recreate the same stories with new settings, because the movie stays the same. Only the actors change. The law of mentalism also reveals something many people are afraid to accept, that you are the co-creator of your own reality. That might feel unfair at first. After all, who would create pain, betrayal, bankruptcy, illness? But it's not about blame. It's about vibration. The mind doesn't create with logical intention. It creates with emotional repetition. It manifests not what you want, but what you hold as truth inside you, day after day, year after year. The good news? You can start thinking differently right now. But not just thinking. You need to vibrate differently. Because thought is the trigger, but vibration is the command. When you start to shift your internal state, even if no one sees it, the universe responds. Little things change. People disappear. Situations collapse. New paths show up. Because reality isn't fixed. It's plastic. It's mental. And you're not here to repeat. You're here to remember. To remember that before matter, there is mind. Before pain, there is a pattern. Before limitation, there is a belief. And if everything is mind, what happens when yours is being manipulated without you even knowing it? You lose control over your own reality. And the scariest part is, it keeps shaping itself. Only now, around ideas that were never yours. Emotions that aren't even yours. Desires that feel like yours, but were silently installed over the years. But why does this happen? Because you live in a universe that works based on codes. Codes that aren't visible, but determine everything that manifests. And these codes follow laws. Not laws created by men, not government decrees or religious rules. Laws that have been in motion since the very beginning. Laws that govern everything from the movement of planets to the pulse of a thought in your mind. Laws that keep working even when you ignore them. It's like gravity. You don't have to believe in it, but you'll still fall if you jump off a building. The problem is, most people are living as if these laws don't exist, as if life were a matter of luck, effort, trial, and error. As if everything were random. But it's not. The universe doesn't respond to randomness. It responds to coherence, to vibration, to frequency. And that's why so many people are stuck in cycles that seem to have no exit. Because they're breaking laws without knowing it. They're trying to plant one thing and harvest another. They're trying to receive what they never emitted. They want stability without presence, prosperity without vibration, love without self-responsibility. And then comes chaos, frustration, repetition. But not because the universe is cruel, it's because it's exact. These laws are like the invisible foundation of reality. It doesn't matter what you think about them, they're active all the time. And what you call life is nothing more than the result of your interaction, or lack of interaction, with these laws. Have you noticed how some people seem to have a kind of luck that doesn't make sense? Like they attract the right things, the right moments, the right encounters. Like they're always in the right place at the right time? That's not luck. It's alignment. They've learned, consciously or unconsciously, how to navigate the laws that govern the invisible plane. They understood that there's a subtle mechanism behind everything and started moving with it instead of against it. The Kybalion was written for that, to give you the map to these laws, to get you to stop rowing against the current and start flying with the wind. But this map isn't handed over as a ready-made recipe. It's delivered as a key, as a frequency, as a vibrational code that only activates when you listen with presence, read with your body, and feel with your field. And if you're still here right now, it's because something in you has already started to decode. You've already noticed there's something greater operating beneath the surface. Something that's not in what happens, but in why it happens. Something you don't control, but you can understand. These laws aren't outside. They're in everything. They're in you. And once you start recognizing them, everything changes. You stop feeling like a victim of reality and start noticing the patterns, the signs, the repetitions, and most importantly, the openings. Because reality isn't a prison. It's a mirror. And what you see outside is always reflecting what's vibrating inside. The secret is learning how that mirror works, learning how to read the reflections, decoding the messages, changing the vibration before trying to change what appears. The 7 laws of the Kybalion aren't just nice concepts. They're hidden gears that govern your health, your relationships, your money, your time, your intuition, your growth. And most impactfully, they govern even your connection with the divine. Because the divine also pulses through order, not chaos. Now imagine what happens when someone learns to move in alignment with these laws. When they start thinking, feeling, and acting in coherence with them. When they stop fighting reality and start having a conversation with it. These people don't live above the laws, they live with them. And those who've learned how to navigate these laws were never controlled again. Because those people discovered something that goes beyond theory. They don't just know the principles, they become the principles in action, and that only happens when something inside you shifts, when you stop being a spectator of reality and start remembering who you truly are. This is where a figure emerges who isn't just historical, but archetypal. Hermes Trismegistus, he wasn't just a wise man, or just a priest, or just a philosopher. He was the living synthesis of 3 powers that almost never coexist in balance: the mind of the king, the heart of the priest. The vision of the prophet: 3 voices, 3 functions, 1 consciousness. Hermes doesn't represent a specific person. He represents a highly integrated state of consciousness where thought is clear, emotion is pure, and action is precise. He wasn't just someone who taught with words. He activated with presence. And he wasn't worshipped as a deity, but recognized as a mirror, because what he embodied, anyone can awaken. Hermes is the fusion point between what you feel, what you think, and what you do. He's the archetype of someone who governs their own field, who honors the sacred, and who sees beyond the visible. As king, he governs his thoughts. He doesn't let the mind lead through impulse. He knows how to silence the noise. He knows which thought to feed, which to ignore, which to dissolve. Because he's learned that anything not directed becomes programming. As priest, he moves through the invisible. He understands the value of the subtle. He doesn't deny emotions. He transforms them. He feels deeply, without drowning. Because he knows that every pain hides a pair, every emotion is a language, every feeling is a vibrational key. And as prophet, he sees before the eyes see. He reads the signs. He spots patterns. He intuits paths. Because he's tuned into the rhythm of the all. And that rhythm, when truly felt, shows what's coming before the world catches on. Hermes Trismegistus is the living alchemy of thinking, feeling, and acting in coherence. Not as 3 separate forces, but as one field vibrating in unison. That's why his wisdom survived for centuries, not because it was mystical, but because it was alive. Hermes didn't speak to impress. He spoke to transform. He didn't use symbols to confuse, but to awaken. He didn't hide the truth. He encoded it, so only those who were ready could recognize it. And when you get close to that frequency, something shifts in you. You start realizing that inner chaos isn't natural, that living divided between what you feel, what you think, and what you do isn't normal. It's a symptom of a fragmented field. And all fragmentation weakens your vibration. The path of integration isn't about perfection. It's about reconnection, about remembering that you're not a bunch of parts fighting each other, but a whole consciousness that was taught to forget itself. The king, the priest, and the prophet live inside you, but in silence, waiting for you to stop getting distracted by the external noise and start listening to the internal call. But to access that triad, you have to go through a rare kind of initiation, one that doesn't happen in temples and doesn't require oaths. It starts in silence, when you decide to restructure your own mind, when you realize that thinking is a revolutionary act, but truly thinking, not repeating someone else's ideas, not reacting on impulse, not accepting packaged narratives, thinking with roots, with clarity, with presence. And for that, there's a method that's been used for centuries to train the heirs of power. It didn't matter if they were kings, spiritual leaders, or initiated magicians. They all went through the same invisible ritual, mastering the trivium. 3 keys, 3 steps, 3 mental functions that have been completely erased from modern education: grammar, logic, rhetoric. And no, we're not talking about grammar rules or stage speech. These words have been emptied over time, but in the past they carried a code. Grammar wasn't just about writing correctly. It was about recognizing the world's symbols, reading reality with the right eyes, spotting hidden patterns, identifying distortions, observing what's being said, and more importantly, what's being left out. It was the first step to waking up from the collective hypnosis, learning to decode the world. Then came logic. Here, the initiate learned to organize thought, to tell cause from effect, to question with integrity, to disarm mental traps, to spot subtle manipulation, both external and internal. Because without logic, you become a prisoner of your own confusion. The mind becomes a battlefield where everything seems true and nothing holds up. And it's in that chaos that outside programming gets in. Where there's no logic, any well-told lie becomes law. Lastly came rhetoric, the art of expressing with precision what's been understood, not to win debates, but to access deep wisdom and transmit it clearly. Rhetoric was the ability to give shape to truth without twisting it to please or manipulate. With these 3 keys, the initiate learned to think with autonomy, to feel with discernment, to communicate with integrity. They no longer needed dogmas, external authority, or systems to validate their experience. And that was the real danger. Because a human being who masters the trivium does not obey. He cooperates, if it makes vibrational sense, but he doesn't submit out of fear, nor does he fit in out of obligation. He recognizes the value of order, but doesn't bow to blind hierarchy. He becomes sovereign, not because he rejects everything, but because he knows how to choose. And that's exactly why this method was erased, removed from schools, ridiculed in curricula, replaced with ready-made formulas, mechanical repetition, and memorization that kills the soul of thought. Because as long as you don't think for yourself, you serve someone else's thinking, and the less you question, the more predictable you become, more manipulable, more influenceable. That's why the trivium wasn't taught to everyone, only to those who would be leaders. only to those who needed to keep their field clean amidst external chaos, only to those who would be in a position to create, not just follow. But today, this structure is coming back, not in textbooks, but in the subtext, in the recoveries your consciousness is making, in the impulse to understand more deeply, in the discomfort you feel when you realize something is out of place, not in the world, but in how you were taught to think. And that's where the path splits. You can keep reacting the way you were programmed to, or you can start building the internal structure of a master. But there's a way to reclaim that knowledge and reprogram your mind the way the masters did. And that path starts with a word, not just any word, not an empty formula, a word that opens, a word that delivers, a word not meant to be understood right away, but to be received like a breath directly into the field of the soul. Kybalion. Few know, but this word isn't just a title, it's a vibrational portal. It comes from the Greek verb Cabbell, which means to receive. But the kind of reception this word carries isn't passive. It's not an intellectual understanding. It's a vibrational reception, a silent activation, as if the sound of it, as it hits your mind, already starts reorganizing forgotten patterns. You don't read the Kybalion, you embody it. It's not there just to be studied. It's there to be absorbed, because it operates through vibration, and vibration doesn't convince, it transforms. Every letter of that word carries symbolic tension. It's like it says, you want to know how the universe works? Then stop trying to control the outside and start reorganizing what vibrates inside. The Kybalion is not a book in the traditional sense. It's a capsule of activation. And the most curious thing is, it doesn't present itself with authority. It doesn't impose itself as a sacred scripture, nor demand worship. It only whispers. And that whisper can only be heard by those who've already begun to awaken. The structure of the text is strangely direct, simple, straightforward. But that's where the code lies. It doesn't want to trap you with complexity. It wants to collide with your consciousness in a straight, raw, precise way, like a blade that separates illusion from the real. And that blade, once it enters, cuts through everything that was built on falsehood. Those who start reading the Kybalion with the rational mind close the book, because it seems like too little, too obvious, too vague. But those who read it with an activated field start to feel a strange warmth, like they're reconnecting with something forgotten, like the words were already written in their skin long before they hit the page. And those who receive that code activate a potential that science still can't explain, because that potential doesn't show up in moments of euphoria. It reveals itself in the midst of chaos. It awakens when you decide to stop hiding from your pain. Have you ever felt rage, deep fear, an emptiness that felt endless? What if I told you all of that is sacred raw material? Most people run from what they feel. They repress, deny, bury, because they were taught to believe that emotion is weakness. But the true masters used every emotion as a portal of transmutation. That technique has a name: sublimation. It's the heart of inner alchemy. The ancient alchemists used to say that lead, a symbol of weight, pain, limitation, could be transformed into gold. But that wasn't about metal. It was about you. It was about the process of taking anger, grief, fear, and raising its frequency until it becomes power, clarity, compassion. It's not a metaphor, it's a real practice. Anger, when understood, becomes just action. Fear, when embraced, becomes refined instinct. Sadness, when listened to, becomes wisdom. Every emotion has a hidden code, and only those who have the courage to face it head-on find the key. That is true transmutation, and it begins when you stop running. The modern world offers distractions so you never have to deal with what you feel, but all power lies on the other side of pain, felt with presence. All gold is born from lead that wasn't thrown away, but embraced. And this technique was used in the most advanced rituals, because only a trained initiate could dive into their emotional field without getting lost, could walk through their own shadows without snuffing out the light, and more than that, could use the pain as fuel for ascension. That's why real alchemy isn't pretty at first. It burns, it confronts, it shatters fragile identities, because there is no real gold without melting the old metal. But that transformation only happens when you understand an eighth law that no one talks about. Yes, there's an eighth. It's not written out plainly. It wasn't forgotten. It was hidden. Because it doesn't work like the others. It doesn't describe the world. It offers you the keys to redesign your own. It's too dangerous to be in the pages of the Kybalion without filters. Because unlike the other seven, this one doesn't just explain reality. It gives you the power to create it. It's called the Law of Generation. But that name misleads those who look too quickly. Many think it only talks about masculine and feminine, about polarities meeting, about energetic fertility, and while all of that is there, it's just the surface. What few realize is that this law hides behind symbolic language a radical principle of sovereignty. It reveals that every manifestation begins in the invisible, not in words, not in actions, but in creative vibration, and that vibration depends on nothing external, not temples, not systems, not validation. It comes from the self. When you understand that, not as theory, but as a felt truth, something shifts at your core. You no longer search for someone to set you free. You become the force that rewrites your own story. The eighth law was left out, not because it was incomplete, too mystical, or hard to understand, but because it was too free. It can't be taught, controlled, or regulated. It awakens. And when it awakens, it breaks everything that once seemed essential. The law of generation, in its deepest level, allows you to manifest realities, to turn pain into a path, to embody possibilities you once only dared to dream. And a being who manifests doesn't submit, doesn't ask for permission, doesn't wait to be saved. And that is the real danger of the Kybalion. It doesn't turn you into a follower of any doctrine. It doesn't hand you a manual of unchangeable commandments. It doesn't create a new prison disguised as enlightenment. It makes you uncontrollable. And that's why this book was erased from schools. That's why, for centuries, it was pushed to the edges of history as superstition, occultism, exaggeration. Because those who access this eighth law are no longer characters in the collective script. They're the author. And when you start writing your own script, when you stop living in reaction and begin generating realities from your vibrational center, the whole system feels threatened. You stop being predictable. You stop being manipulable. You stop being part of the crowd, because a being that generates its own reality is a being impossible to capture. And that's why now, more than ever, certain forces want to keep this eighth law buried, not because it's false, but because it's too true to be allowed. It's the breaking point. And if you've made it this far, something in you has already started to access it. There's a force inside you, but there's also something that always seems to pull you back. Like every step forward comes with an invisible sabotage. Like life is a repetition camouflaged as something new, a cycle, a loop. And the most twisted part? It disguises itself as choices. You wake up determined, make promises, become aware. But before you know it, you're back on autopilot. It's like there's a code running in the background of your field, a code that thinks one thing, feels another, and acts in a third direction. And that misalignment creates cracks. It distorts your frequency, keeps you in survival mode, even when everything around you seems stable. That's how the loop feeds itself, from your own inner imbalance. You can have high thoughts, but if your emotions are still vibrating in fear, the field responds to fear. You can feel love, but if your actions come from guilt, what comes back is confusion. The universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. And to be is to align. Mind, emotion, energy. This is the hidden tripod that shapes your reality. A subtle triangle that, when misaligned, creates the illusion that you're making progress, when really, you're just moving within the same circle. Have you ever wondered why you keep repeating patterns even after all your self-awareness? Why you attract the same type of person, go through the same conflicts, fall into the same reactions? It's not bad luck. It's not karma. It's code. A code that imprisons you until you decode it, and it doesn't trap you out of malice, but out of vibrational inertia. And the more you fight it without understanding its origin, the stronger it gets, because it was built by repetition and can only be dissolved with applied awareness, not blind effort. The real prison was never the outside world. It was this internal misalignment disguised as routine, as identity, as a way of being. And maybe now you understand why so many people awaken, but don't move forward. Because awakening is just the beginning. Deprogramming, integrating, and aligning the three centers, mind, emotion, and energy, is what breaks the cycle. But that's only possible if you gain access to a very ancient code, a code that isn't in words. It's in the hidden rhythm of the universe, and it has a name. It's called the Code of Reversibility. And this code starts to operate when you stop seeing yourself as an executor of the laws and start remembering that you are their origin. The 7 laws are maps. The 8th is the compass. But there is something before both the map and the compass, something that can't be named, only experienced. That something is being. Not being in the biographical sense, not in a social role, not in the spiritual ego, but being as the point of convergence of all vibrations, as a living center of consciousness that doesn't depend on intermediaries. As long as you're trying to master the laws, you're still outside them. But when you go silent, integrate, embody, the laws bow before your vibration. Because being doesn't repeat what already exists. It creates the new. The 7 laws are tools. The 8th is a key, but the being is the door itself. And this is where the difference begins between knowing the laws and becoming the law itself. You're not a magician trying to control reality from the outside in. You are reality waking up to itself. That's why no true master gives you power. They only remind you. Because the being can't be given. It's remembered. And that remembering comes the moment you stop trying to become and start vibrating what you've always been. Reality bends to the being because the being doesn't need it to exist. This is the point that can't be taught. It can only be activated. And when that happens, everything that was external realigns. The laws are no longer steps to be climbed. They become natural pulses of your field. You stop being a student of truth and become the very expression of it. But the real secret hasn't been revealed yet. You're not learning anything here. You're remembering. Every word that resonated, every part that gave you chills, every pause where you felt something you couldn't explain, that was the memory reorganizing itself inside you. The Kybalion wasn't written to inform you, it was written to mirror you. That's why it feels cold to those who read it only with their eyes, and revealing to those who read it with their field, because it doesn't give answers, it sparks the right questions. And those who access those questions begin to truly see themselves. Now you know it's no longer about collecting knowledge, it's about recognizing who you've always been, before the programming, before the beliefs, before the scars. That recognition doesn't happen through logic, it happens through presence. You become the law not when you understand it, but when you vibrate it in silence. When every thought, every breath, and every action aligns with what no longer needs to be searched for, because you already are. And now that you've seen yourself, you can't unsee it. You might try to go back to your routine. You might pretend nothing's changed. But the truth is, a code has been activated, and that code has a mission: to dissolve everything you're not, until only what is real remains. If this message touched something in you, it's because that memory was only asleep. Now, you decide, go back to sleep, or wake up for good. If you've made it this far, it's because something in you has already started to break out of the loop. Now write in the comments, I choose to reverse the code. That simple act activates your vibrational decision and can inspire others to do the same. Let's break this cycle together. Oh, and if you feel like you can contribute directly to the channel and help this message reach even more people, the link for that is in the first pinned comment. With your help, more codes can be awakened around the world. And heads up, there's a special video set aside just for you, already tuned into this frequency. It's showing up on your screen now. Click it and meet me there, because what's about to be revealed next completes this journey that's already begun inside you.